I made a video recently about the millennial experience. What defines us, what shaped it, and why somehow it's always just felt out of reach. In the comments, a lot of people responded with one answer to a question I didn't expect to be so hard to answer. And it wasn't really a question in the video. I was asking why, not what. But what is the defining millennial novel? Their answer, Harry Potter. And honestly, I get it, but I also don't. Because Harry Potter is great. It's magical, comforting, and huge. It shaped an entire generation's imagination. But it's also a children's book. And if the only piece of literature we can agree on as a definitive millennial novel is something most of us read before we hit puberty, something written for children, what does it say about us? That maybe we're not just nostalgic, but maybe we're slightly broken, fragmented, disconnected from the kind of collective experience that lets a generation say, this is the book. This book gets us. If you enjoy watching my slow descent into creative breakdown, consider supporting my continued descent into that said madness. Leave a comment, it fuels my fragile sense of self-worth. Subscribe, because watching me struggle in real time is probably entertaining. And join my Patreon, YouTube memberships, or Substack. Your support helps me justify my life choices and possibly my entire existence. Gen X had slacker culture, had High Fidelity, Fight Club, and the Virgin Suicides. Boomers had On the Road and The Bell Jar. Their novels wasn't just stories, they were emotional snapshots. They captured the restless, angry, existential moods of their time. The fiction of those generations wrestles with what it's meant to grow up in a world that didn't make sense. And what do we have? A book about wizards we read in elementary school. That's not to say no one is writing. There are brilliant authors out there telling stories about burnout, economic anxiety, identity, intimacy in the age of apps, and everything else we're going through. But none of those books has broken through as the one that everybody reads and feels seen by. But why not? So, I think part of the answer is that millennials are, by nature and design, fragmented. We came of age during a time of rapid change. The internet broke everything open. The middle classes began to erode. Every institution that promised us stability, school, college, work, marriage, housing, government, began to collapse right when we were supposed to step into them. We inherited debt, burnout, existential crises after existential crises. We were raised on the promise of individualism. You can be anything, they would tell us, and then shove us into a gig economy and told us to figure it out. And in the middle of it all, we lost that thread. Not because we're lazy or unserious or broken in a conventional sense, but because the world around us cracked before we had a chance to understand what it was supposed to be. So maybe there can't be a single novel that defines us. Because we've never been one thing, we've always been fragmented. Some of us, on the most basic level, grew up with Sailor Moon and R.L. Stine, others on Animorphs and Degrassi. Some of us went to college, some of us didn't. Some of us got laid off our first real jobs in the early mid-2000s. Hi, by the way, that's a familiar experience, 4 of them. And never fully recovered. Some of us moved back in with our parents, some of us started OnlyFans, some of us became therapists, some of us desperately want to be parents, some of us can barely keep a plant alive. What book captures all of that on the most basic level? And yet, Harry Potter, it keeps coming up. Not because it says anything deep about the millennial experience, but because it was there when we needed something to hold on to. It was one of the last moments we all felt connected, standing in midnight lines for the next book, dressing up for movie premieres, sobbing over fictional deaths. It gave us language, even if it wasn't ours. It gave us Hogwarts houses, Patronuses, and inside jokes. It gave us a shared childhood, even if it never grew up with us. And maybe that's the point. Maybe we keep clinging to Harry Potter because we never really got anything after it. We left childhood behind and entered a world that had no script. We wanted a story to guide us, but all we got is endless news cycles, endless scrolling, and just vibes. I really hate it when people say, oh, it just vibes. What do you mean it vibes? I hate that word, it's so overused. So, if someone were to write the Millennial novel, what would it be? It wouldn't be a single story, it would be messy and non-linear. It would include tweets and thread transcripts and therapy and emails that never got sent. It would be half autofiction, half meme. It would be about money, sex, grief, jobs that slowly kill your soul. It would be about love in the age of ghosting, about being too online and too alone. And it would probably have a soundtrack of early 2000s pop punk and the constant hum of existential dread. It would feel a little like disassociation, but also home. Maybe someone has written it. Maybe it's already on a shelf somewhere, quietly brilliant, overlooked. Maybe we'll only recognise it in years from now when the dust settles and we can finally see ourselves clearly. Or maybe the Millennial novel isn't a book at all. Maybe it's a million tiny stories scattered across Reddit threads, TikTok confessionals, podcast episodes, group chats, and Google Docs. Maybe it's a feeling more than a narrative, a collage instead of a portrait. But I still want that book. I still want that one story that dares say this is us. Not as a throwback, not as a meme, but as we really are. Aching, hilarious, overthinking, underpaid, exhausted. If we get out of bed the wrong way, something cracks. Idealistic and somehow still trying. So, what would that be? I don't think it's possible to create that novel. Not yet, anyway.